Donald Trump was not your typical politician, not even close. Before he ran for president, he was a famous businessman and a reality TV star. You probably knew him from his show, The Apprentice, where he would point his finger and say, "You're fired." He lived in a golden tower in New York City, and his name was on everything, from hotels to steaks. Most people in politics start as lawyers or local officials, but Trump just jumped right into the big leagues. He didn't talk like a politician. He didn't act like a politician. And he certainly didn't follow the political playbook. This made him a complete outsider, a wild card in a game that usually has very strict rules. Because he was so different, the experts didn't take him seriously at first. They really didn't. The media, the political establishment, even members of his own Republican Party, they all thought his campaign was a joke. They would laugh on television, saying he had no chance. They called him a showman, not a serious candidate. They pointed out his lack of experience in government and his often controversial statements. The resistance he faced was huge. Every day, it seemed like a new story came out predicting his campaign would finally end. But it never did. The more they criticized him, the more his supporters seemed to love him. So, what was his secret? It was his style. Donald Trump had a way of talking that was completely unique. He spoke in simple, direct language that everyone could understand. He wasn't giving long, boring policy speeches. Instead, he held massive rallies that felt more like rock concerts. He would go on stage and just talk, sometimes for hours, about whatever was on his mind. He gave people nicknames and used social media, especially Twitter, like no one before him. He could send out a message to millions of people in an instant, completely bypassing the traditional news outlets that were so critical of him. This direct line to his followers was a powerful tool. This communication style helped him connect with a specific group of voters. These were people who felt ignored and left behind by the government in Washington, D.C. They were tired of polished politicians who made promises but never seemed to deliver. They saw the country changing in ways they didn't like, and they felt like no one was listening to their concerns. Trump heard them. He told them he was their voice. He promised to make America great again, a simple but powerful message that resonated with millions. He wasn't afraid to say things that were considered politically incorrect, and for his supporters, that was a sign of strength and honesty. The 2016 election was supposed to be a sure thing. Everyone said so. The polls, the pundits, the papers, they all predicted a victory for his opponent, Hillary Clinton. She was a political heavyweight with decades of experience as a first lady, a senator, and the Secretary of State. On the other side was Trump, who had never held public office in his life. During the Republican primaries, he had defeated over a dozen experienced governors and senators, which was a surprise in itself. But beating Clinton in the general election seemed impossible. The experts had their charts and their data, and all of it pointed to a clear loss for the man from New York. The campaign was a battle of giants. Trump faced constant criticism from all sides. The media reported on his past business dealings, his controversial remarks, and his unconventional campaign tactics. His opponents painted him as unqualified and unfit for the presidency. Even many leaders within the Republican Party refused to support him, believing he would lead them to a devastating defeat. It felt like Trump was standing alone against the entire political world. He was outnumbered and outspent, a lone warrior fighting against a powerful and organized machine. The pressure was immense, and any ordinary candidate would have likely crumbled under the weight of it all. But Donald Trump's rallies told a different story. Thousands upon thousands of people would show up, filling stadiums and arenas to hear him speak. They wore red hats with his slogan and chanted his name. These were the voters who felt invisible to the political class. They were factory workers whose jobs had disappeared, farmers struggling to make ends meet, and everyday citizens who believed the system was rigged against them. Trump's message was a beacon of hope for them. He promised to bring back jobs, secure the border, and fight for the forgotten man and woman. He talked about draining the swamp in Washington, and to them, that sounded like a perfect idea. On election night in November 2016, the world watched in shock. As the results started pouring in, state after state that was supposed to be blue for Clinton started turning red for Trump. The experts on television were speechless. Their predictions were falling apart live on air. By the end of the night, Donald Trump had done the impossible. He had won the presidency in one of the biggest political upsets in American history. He had proven everyone wrong. He had tapped into a deep well of frustration and anger in the country, and it had carried him all the way to the White House. The political landscape was changed forever. After his presidency ended in 2021, many people thought Donald Trump's political career was over for good. He faced a second impeachment, numerous legal challenges, and endless criticism. The media counted him out once again, saying his time had passed. But Trump had other plans. He started holding rallies again, drawing the same massive crowds as before. He hinted at a return, and in late 2022, he made it official. He was running for president again. His comeback journey was just beginning, and it would be filled with even more obstacles than his first campaign. He was no longer just an outsider. He was a former president fighting to get his old job back. This time, the challenges were different. He wasn't just fighting the media and the political establishment. He was also fighting a series of legal battles. There were investigations and court cases in multiple states, all happening while he was on the campaign trail. His critics said these legal troubles made him unfit to run for office. They hoped it would sink his campaign. But something strange happened. For his dedicated base of supporters, these legal fights were not a weakness. They saw it as proof that the deep state was trying to stop him. Every new charge against him only made them more determined to vote for him, fueling his narrative that he was being persecuted for fighting for them. As the 2024 campaign heated up, Trump's message was sharper than ever. He talked about finishing what he started. He promised to fix the economy, secure the border, and project American strength around the world. He used the same bold, confident style that had worked for him before, but this time he also had a record as president to run on. He reminded voters of the policies from his first term and promised to bring them back, but even bigger and better. He argued that the country had gone in the wrong direction since he left office, and that he was the only one who could get it back on track. The result was another stunning victory. On November 5, 2024, Donald Trump won the presidential election against Vice President Kamala Harris. He didn't just win the Electoral College like in 2016. This time, he also won the national popular vote. He managed to flip key states that he had lost in 2020, proving his political instincts were as sharp as ever. He had defied the odds once again, overcoming legal challenges and relentless criticism to pull off an unbelievable comeback. The man who was twice counted out had twice proven the experts wrong, securing his place as a dominant force in American politics. One of the most surprising things about Trump's 2024 victory was who voted for him. In 2016, his support came mostly from white, non-college educated voters in rural areas. But in 2024, his coalition became much more diverse. He made huge gains with groups that had traditionally voted for Democrats. For example, his support among Hispanic voters grew so much that it was nearly a 50-50 split. This was a massive shift. He also won more support from Black voters and Asian American voters than in any of his previous campaigns. This showed that his message was starting to resonate far beyond his original base. This change was a big deal. The Democratic Party had long counted on strong support from minority voters to win elections. But Trump's focus on economic issues like inflation and jobs seemed to cut across racial lines. He also appealed to new and returning voters, people who didn't vote in 2020 but showed up in 2024. This group supported him by a wide margin. He was building a new kind of political alliance, one that mixed his traditional rural base with a growing number of working-class voters from different backgrounds. It was a coalition that the old political maps couldn't quite explain. Throughout it all, Trump's reaction to his victories was classic Trump. He was always confident, always bold. He loved to talk about his wins, describing them as historic and incredible. He never showed doubt, even when things looked tough. He saw himself as a fighter, a champion for the people against a corrupt system. In his victory speeches, he would often say that only he could fix the country's problems. This self-belief was a core part of his brand. His supporters saw it as the strength of a true leader, while his critics saw it as arrogance. But either way, it was undeniably who he was. Donald Trump's two victories, in 2016 and 2024, completely reshaped American politics. They showed that a candidate from outside the political system could win, not just once, but twice. He rewrote the rules of campaigning with his rally style and his mastery of social media. He built a powerful connection with voters who felt left out, and then expanded that support to new groups. His story is a reminder that in politics, anything is possible. The outsider from New York who became a two-time president proved that you should never, ever underestimate the power of a simple message delivered by a truly unforgettable messenger.